All right.
All right, Paula. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
How you doing this morning, Paula?
I'm fine. It's a bright, sunny day out, but it's not horribly hot yet, so yay.
Okay, and I see you all bright over there, looking all professional this morning.
Well, I've got a work call later, so yes,
No doubt, no doubt. Paula, tomorrow's a big day, the
yes.
big pizza and poetry slam. Are you ready, Paula?
I am. I mean, I guess you're never completely ready, but I'm excited. So,
No doubt. Now, Paula, this garden has been going for 10 years, Paula. Big congratulations to you as well. Paula, this garden started in 2014. And, of course, you've been recognized for a lot and you received awards, one in particular, the Community Garden of the Year, Paula. How does that happen in 1 year, Paula?
well, I think some of it was the garden is sort of a culmination of things. So there's a
Yes,
production aspect of it because we recognize that the location is in a space that USDA Economic Research Service identifies as a low income, low access urban food desert. We stopped using the
sure.
term food desert and started saying food apartheid because a desert's a naturally occurring environmental situation, and this is not naturally occurring. So one of the things that we looked at doing was the production piece of having an on-site farmers market where we sell the produce for $1 a pound. So that
Okay.
deals with accessibility and affordability. So I think that was one aspect of why we were named Community Garden of the Year. I think the fact that we also began by having gardening programs, particularly for children. So that first year, Damon and Charles were doing classes on things like water conservation, how to build an Oya, and composting, and vermiculture. Worms are wonderful. And organic chemistry in the garden and how to build your own soil amendments and composting. So I think the combination of having a place of aesthetic beauty that was also producing food and making it accessible and affordable and providing classes, all of that worked together. And I think the fact that we're on the grounds of a church is very significant.
Yes. Okay, now, Paula, you said that there's a farmer's market here. What days are you able to actually buy the produce from your garden?
Our farmers market is on Wednesday afternoon from 4 to 7. And we partner with Richland Grow Up, which is a cooperative of farmers in Mansfield, Ohio. So they bring their produce on Wednesday. So we have their produce and our produce. But it's really important to us that the produce be clean, organic, fresh, and affordable. So it's $1 a pound. We do not give away food. This is not a food
Okay.
giveaway. We recognize that food banks are essential, particularly for emergency situations.
Yes.
But we also recognize that, and again, we're on the grounds of not just a church, but an apostolic Pentecostal Bible believing church, right? So when
Sure,
it
sure.
says we're the
Right.
head and not the tail,
Sure.
we believe that we have the capacity to grow and provide what we need. And we don't have to be standing in line waiting for a free handout like the Civil War just ended. And this is the Freedmen's Bureau for the head and not the
Right.
tail. That's a whole different way of thinking about things. And that scripture, one of the things that we think about, one of our hashtags is he started us in a garden for a reason. The human family did not begin in a tabernacle or a church or a temple. We began in a garden.
Now, you say we began in the garden. Kind of give us a little bit more of that, which we know about the story in the garden as far as
Right.
Adam and Eve. But why is this so important to, like you say, you want to educate as far as kids, knowing where everything started at.
Right.
But why is it so important to kind of make this a necessity?
Well, I think two things. I think, first of all, again, coming at it from a scriptural perspective, in the
Yes.
beginning, so in the story of the beginning, which unites all of us across the Abrahamic tradition of Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, have the shared origin story in Genesis. And most of this beginning comes as spoken word. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God said,
Sure.
"Let there be a division of and that happened. It was all spoken word until we get to the garden. And then God planted a garden. He did not speak that, He planted it.
Okay.
So, this idea
Yes.
of work as a form of worship is something that I think we've lost track of. And so part of our hashtag, one of our hashtags is, again, we started in the garden. Our second hashtag is we were brought here to cultivate. A lot of
Okay.
us have unaddressed post-traumatic slave syndrome. So we're triggered by the idea of doing outside work. We think that that diminishes us. We're
Okay.
happy with spoken word. We are not comfortable with work. And then on a personal level, Will, so you knew my late husband. Charles
Yes.
was the one who introduced me to gardening when we had our children. So
Okay.
Damon and Charles were born when I was in law school. So when I graduated, they were 13 months old, and I had nursed them for the first year and was starting to buy baby food. And Charles
Okay.
said, "Sweetie pie, we don't know where that's coming from." And I was like, "Yeah, we do. It's coming from the store."
In the store.
It's coming from the store. And he said, "We need to grow our own food." And I was like,
Okay.
"I don't know who you think has time for that."
Yes.
And, because I went to CSG and Wellesley and law degree, hair flip, hair flip. And he said, "Gardening is like parenting and pastoring. They all require the same daily attention to detail and the same posture of humility, head bowed, body bent. People who don't have time to garden probably don't have time to parent."
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Uh, That's how I started gardening. Okay. That's how I started gardening.
Well, now the garden, we have what, 3,850 square foot of garden, a very
Now
big presence.
5,000. It's now 5,000 square feet.
See,
Yeah.
5,000 square feet. What a presence. Talking about the garden, it sounds like too, as far as relationships are being built inside of this garden, even though we're putting the work in, but you have students coming over to help, you have kids helping. How does the relationships that are built in here, what do you think those are doing when all these people come together to help this garden? And
Well,
family also help out.
yeah. Well, one of our issues at Church of Christ, the Apostolic Faith. And so I think sometimes because we're so used to it, we sometimes don't notice how significant this church history is. But this is a
Okay.
congregation founded by descendants of formerly enslaved Africans. And so this is a
Okay.
congregation that's been in place for over 120 years. So I'm fourth generation in this congregation. So the
Mm,
idea of relationship is something that I grew up witnessing what happens across generations when you have relationship and
okay.
expanding that because one of our issues this year with our pastor has been outreach.
Yes.
Garden has allowed us to do outreach beyond our own congregation, even beyond this community. So, as you
Okay.
pointed out, the students from Ohio State and faculty members from Ohio State College of Engineering have been really invested in the work for almost the totality of the duration of this garden. We've also had relationships with people at Nationwide Children's Hospital. We've had relationships with kids in the community. We've had people who've worked in this garden, kids who've worked in this garden who ended up coming to church, coming to Sunday school, getting baptized. So we're not seeing the garden as a form of proselytizing, but we do
Mhm.
see the garden as a way of reflecting the love of God through work as a form of worship. in this space, in this garden that is biblical in its orientation.
You know, a lot of people, I've come to your garden as well,
Yeah.
as and people they say it's therapeutic when they come into the garden. When they walk away and you talk to them, and it just seems like they walk away with a sense of peace. How does that happen? Out of all of that we're doing inside of here, but they come here for some tranquility. You know, um, elaborate on that.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why we have so many benches. So I don't want people to
Yeah.
feel like when you come to the garden, you have to work. That's not the only thing that goes on, because you're
Right,
right.
right.
There's a level of tranquility that comes from being in nature. I think of the earth as a large garden, right? This is
Yes.
this is where God placed us. And this is where we're supposed to be. So
Okay.
it's not surprising that when we are in nature, that we have a sense of calm and a sense of peace and a sense of tranquility, and often a place of quiet. So, when the scripture says, I come to the garden alone while the dew is still on the rose, right? That quietude. And I think a
Mm.
lot of times in church, we miss the opportunity to be quiet, right? To be
Oh,
still
yeah.
and know. The word says, be still and know that I am God, and that He is
Okay.
in
Yes.
that still small voice. And a lot of
Right.
times in our regular lives, there's so much noise. If God is coming to us in a still small voice, would we be able to hear it?
Wow. Yes. Yes. Yes.
So in the garden, there is the opportunity for quiet. There's the opportunity for, I know when our children were little,
Hmm.
Charles used the garden as such an incredible set of teaching tools. And I think a lot is revealed to us in that garden. And so, back to your original point about the tranquility, you're right. People frequently leave the garden and say, I plan to only stay 15. I just came to buy some tomatoes, came to get some collard greens, and here it is 2 hours later, and I'm still here. And I think
I'm still
part of
here.
that's also because the impact of outreach is intersectionality. So sometimes
Right. Okay.
classmates of mine from Columbus School for Girls, or from the Columbus Wellesley Club, or the women's board at Franklin Park Conservatory, they might be coming and they're interacting with members of our congregation. And they may be
Sure.
interacting with children in the neighborhood. And they may be interacting with students at the College of Engineering. A lot of these people's paths would never cross any place other than in this garden.
Right. Wow. 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 That's. I mean, it's excellent because, like you said, we don't really have a spot to just get away. What I mean, and just get in tune with things. It speaks a lot, though, to you as a person, though, to be able to talk to all these different type of people. What I mean? Because you really have to be made to feel at home as well when you walk in the garden. So that goes a long way.
Well, thank you. I think some of that's because I know what it is to be the conspicuous other. So
Yes.
I know what that feels like to be like odd and a little bit out of sync. And so the garden is a space
Okay.
where people can come and, all right, so you might be the only white person on this afternoon, or you might be the only graduate student, or you might be the only little kid. You might
Kid.
be the
Right.
only, at that moment, that might be you, but that's okay. It's okay if you're the
Yeah.
conspicuous other. And I think a lot of times we move in clusters of people who are just like us, who reflect
Okay.
us, our beliefs, our thoughts, our ideology, our demographic, our gender, our race, our ethnicity. And that's comfortable. I get that. But I think it's an enhancement to the quality of our lives one of the things that one of our other hashtags is biodiversity and cross-pollination isn't just for plants. You maximize your production in a garden when you have companion planting and you have cross-pollination. If you
Right.
just have a row of cabbage, you're going to have a lot of cabbage beetles. You're going to have problems with insects. One of the ways we help
Right.
reduce that, because we don't use chemicals, is we do integrative pest management. And a big part of that is companion planting and cross-pollination. I think as humans, we need to do more of that. We need to spend more time with people who are not like us, who don't see the world
Yes.
through our lens, who people that you have to say, you really think that? Like, tell me, why do you think that? What is that about?
Which is cool. And like you said, it gives us different perspectives, different understandings. Paul, you speak about sound like a lot of technology that will being used in here and like a farm bots. There's so many different things that's inside of this garden. It's just not an everyday garden. We're
Right.
going into this fundraiser tomorrow night. What is the vision for the next 10 years?
The next 10 years. Well, the vision for the next 10 years is that I won't be running it. So, because
Well,
I'm gonna be 70 this year. So,
congratulations.
I'm thinking that Damon and Charles, who are the co-managers of the garden, will take this to the
Yeah.
next level. I mean, I think part of what's also special is, the garden started as free grief therapy. One of the things
Okay.
that we do really great in church, I think, is we are great about praying and fasting and meditating and studying the word. And we're great in encouraging people while we're in a struggle, right? So when someone is ill, when a loved one is struggling with, we are really good at coming together and praying for that person and for a positive outcome. If the outcome is death, we are not great about dealing with that, right? We are great right up to, if you have any sick among you, call for the elders of the church, we'll pray for them and they will recover. If the person does not, we then say, God doesn't make any mistakes. And sometimes that can be a difficult thing to process. So we
Right.
started the garden really as free grief therapy. And by we, I mean Damon, Charles, and Evan, so our three sons, but also my brother David and his wife Sonia. So you know how close we all are as an
Yes.
extended
Yes.
family. Their children, David, Samuel, Joseph, Benjamin, and Alexandria, along with Damon and Charles, constructed this garden. I mean, I think sometimes it's hard to believe that this was once just a fallow field. It was just,
Yes.
it was a great place. We had picnics and we had fun there, but it was just a field. Um,
Mm.
we bought 700 feet of untreated lumber. They built these raised beds. We bought 40 tons of organic soil. They lined the beds with cardboard for organic weed control, wheelbarrowed in all of that
Mm.
soil. And that first year, we planted 3,000 seeds and 100 live plants. So it was
Wow.
a labor of love, but it was also a reflection of the kind of person that Charles was.
Okay. Yeah.
Because it's one thing to get up at the funeral or the homegoing and say, oh, I love this person was wonderful, and then that's it. But to
Mhm.
think that Charles's children and nephews and nieces, who were all grown people, these were not kids, spent an entire summer constructing this space in his memory. And what I
Mhm.
think is significant about that is, when the word says, give honor where honor is due, and we
Right.
should be looking for examples. I think the fact that his children and his nephews and niece were so impressed by the way in which Charles lived his life before them. So,
Right.
again, I'm fourth generation in holiness. So I grew up in a
Okay.
saved household. But I can tell you, Charles, in his day-to-day lived life, was the most Christ-like person I have ever seen. And
Okay.
I
Yeah.
think that is then reflected in creating this space, this garden. And the technology is also a reflection of Charles because, as you know, he was a geeky nerd person. So he would
Yes.
have been all over this farm bot and the hydroponics and the fact that it's all solar powered.
Yes.
So, and giving our children, our communal children, an opportunity to have hands-on experience with science and technology. So that's why, we do the free summer day camp, STEM to STEAM, it's all in the
I was going
garden.
to ask you about that.
Yes.
Yes.
So that's coming up the first week of August. And what's exciting about that is the work that we've been doing. So the science part of it, the tech part with Dr. Chris Radcliffe and Dr. David Delane, who, Chris started working at the garden, I want to say 8 years ago. I thought he was a student. I mean,
Okay.
I'd known Chris for about a year before I realized he was on the faculty. And what was so impressive about that was he didn't lead with status. He didn't come in like I'm the doctor, I'm the professor at the Ohio State University College of Engineering. I'm the white guy. I'm here to help you Black people. He came in as a
Right.
volunteer. And
Ooh,
that's who
good stuff.
introduced us to Dr. David Delane. And so
Right.
between the two of them and their undergraduate and graduate students, we were able to build this sort of cohort of science and tech experts to work in the garden.
Wow.
And that has been so significant. And again, a reflection of one of Charles's dreams, which was after finishing homeschooling our own children. And that was ugly. I'm sure Damon and Charles haven't have told you it was ugly. But we homeschooled them till college. And while
Okay.
we were homeschooling them, Charles was really adamant about these enrichment experiences, oceanography camp, engineering camp, space camp. And his dream
Mm.
was once we have taken care of our own spawn, we should be doing this for other children. So Damon and Charles went off to Princeton, Evan went to Amherst. Clearly, the academics worked.
Yes.
Charles died before we really had a chance to start doing this more broadly. So
Okay.
every time that we have the STEM to STEAM, I feel like he would be pleased to see other children having the exposure to this. So the science part, the tech part, and there's a music component. Charles was really into music. And
Yes.
so Sister Myra Conley has been just an amazing music instructor. And then
Yes.
the children all get a sketchbook and a watercolor set and a journal. So
Okay.
the STEM to STEAM, so it's the science, technology, engineering, and art and mathematics.
Okay. Well, Paula, as you've named family, professors, teachers, volunteers, everybody has been or has a hand in helping out here. And it kind of ties back to the mission, let's grow together,
Mm.
which you have. I mean, everybody has had their hand in here. And as a result of that, success is exactly what it is, a successful garden. Um, Now we're going into the pizza and poetry slam tomorrow.
Right.
Is there anything that you're trying to, or anything you're striving for in this fundraiser that you'd like to see happen in this fundraiser tomorrow? Anything in particular?
I primarily want to increase awareness of the holistic health benefits. I mean, one of the partners that we've worked with is Dr. Amrik Singh at Nationwide Children's Hospital, and doing the biometrics and looking at how do yes, we obviously want everybody to be healthy into their old age, but a lot of good health begins in childhood. And part of
Yes.
what Dr. Singh has been working on is tracking biometrics, helping. What are the things that we need to do to help children develop healthy eating habits? And healthy eating habits also are much easier to do when children are involved in growing their own food, when they
Yes.
understand about food and understand about how food can be seasoned, right? And how can it be
Right.
flavored without relying exclusively on salt. So when the children are in the garden, and they have these experiences with the pizza oven, but also with all the herbs that we're pulling from the garden to put on the pizza. So I think I want people to be aware of what's happening. I want people to think about reproducing this in other spaces. I
Right.
would love it if every church had its own garden. I
Wow. What a blessing.
yeah, I think every church should have its own garden. I think that we should be able to help people actualize this idea that I'm the head and not the tail, and
Mm,
that what I need is provided for me in the garden. So even when we talk about the herbs, what are the medicinal uses, right? So when people talk about their arthritis, maybe you want to get some hibiscus trees and dry those flowers for
right.
hibiscus tea. You're having trouble with memory. Maybe you want to grow some rosemary. Your nerves are a little bad. You have some anxiety. Maybe along with praying and fasting, you might want to have some lavender. Um, how do we better utilize what God has already made available for us?
True, true. And that's a good point, because it is all here. And a lot of times we do run to the doctor opposed to just going and doing the research and realizing that it's actually grown right in the garden. And you made a good point of having a garden at every church because I'm riding, and a lot of times I see these gardens, these community gardens, when I'm riding down the street. I see them every now and then, but to have one at every church would be great to add in to what we're already studying right now.
Because it's all there.
Paul?
Your blood pressure's bad, grow some parsley and juice that. Okay. Grow some celery and juice that. Um,
Yes.
your energy level's low, grow some beets and roast them. And I also think having a garden at every church, again, it's biblical. He started us in a garden for a reason. Hey,
Yes.
there are no accidents. There are no accidents
Right.
with God.
Paula, I definitely want to say congratulations to you on 10 years of having a great garden there, the Charles Madison Nabrit Memorial Garden.
Thank you.
Congratulations to the family who's helped out with you. Congratulations to every student, every child, every professor, everybody that's had their hand in this to make this a success. I want to say congratulations to them. Tomorrow night, we will see you at the Charles Madison Nabrit Memorial Garden at 6:30. At 6:30, and this is 1200 Bretnell Avenue, Columbus, Ohio. Any closing words,
And
Paul?
I just want to say how I think it's super significant that this is happening on the grounds of the Church of Christ of the Apostolic Faith.
Okay.
Because I think frequently people don't think about apostolic Pentecostal believers as folks on the forefront of change, right?
Yes.
A lot of times people start off, and that's why most people know about our church. That's people think of it as and refer to it as Britnell. But what typically has happened is, and this isn't something people necessarily like to talk about, but this is a fact. A lot of people got family who grew up in the sanctified church. And then we get a little piece of education.
Uh-oh.
And we outgrow that. We see that as something that is more rustic, and that's what we used to do. And so I think it's just really amazing that this really large garden that's doing all of this incredible work with
Yes.
science and technology and engineering and art, and it's happening on the grounds of an apostolic Pentecostal church. Okay.
Mm.
I think that's hugely significant. I think it's hugely significant that again, my kids, Damon and Charles, are fifth generation in this congregation, and they went off to Princeton. They went to Pharaoh's daughter's palace and came
Mm,
back,
came back.
right?
Well,
And that's what we should be doing. Our children should be equipped to go out into Pharaoh's daughter's palaces.
mm,
And then, like in Hebrew, when it says Moses' parents saw he was a proper child, they were not afraid of the king's commandments. We are not
yes.
going to be afraid of the anti-Blackness that's out here. We're going to make spaces for our children to thrive and then go out into the
Mm,
world and then bring all of that skill, all of that talent, all
yes.
that expertise back,
Yes. Back.
back to the
Yes.
family. So I'm
Yes.
really excited that our church is on the cutting edge of this.
Well, I mean, you make a lot of good points. And like you said, bring it back home. Don't take it and go somewhere else because, as you know, we are in a deficit of having, I mean, this information. And
Yeah.
if it continues, we'll see the gap get bigger and bigger in our communities.
Yeah. Well,
So,
Charles used to always say to our kids when they were growing up, don't just be a consumer, be a contributor of beloved community. A lot of times we take all that community has to offer. And then as soon as we're big enough to stand on our own 2 feet, we leave.
we leave. Yes.
We
Yes.
leave. So,
Well,
yes. So thank you for the
no
interview.
doubt. That's okay. And thank you for your contribution and everything, Paula. Tomorrow night, 6:30 to 8:30, we'll be at the Charles Madison Nabrit Memorial Garden. That's 1200 Brettenell Avenue. Have a blessed day, Paula, and thank you again for the interview.
Oh, thank you, Will. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Let's see. How do I end this?
That was good.